Having technical issues. Guys, we're doing this live as we always do. This is Three Kings, a subreddit to share our experiences following any kind of paranormal recipe or ritual. Not just the titular Three Kings. So today we have a very special guest with us. He's a community member, Jetty Forestman, in the background with the guitar music. How are you doing, sir?
I'm doing good. You caught me tuning my guitar.
Sweet Home Alabama. That was some pretty sweet music you had going on there.
Yeah, I actually had to learn that song from scratch like a couple of months ago for a TV commercial I filmed.
Nice, nice. Well,
Yeah.
starting in the right foot here. So yeah, in the meanwhile, Dapper fixes his connection microphone issues. I apologize to the streamers for the bad. Sorry for the to the viewers for the bad start to the stream. So what I wanted to do with this podcast was just to give an opportunity to the community to kind of share the kind of experiences that they have been living when it comes to the occult, when it comes to paranormal stuff. So our community has a mix of people. Some of them are heavy believers in stuff. Other are more skeptic. Others are agnostic. I count myself amongst the agnostic. But in general, I think that trying to push the boundaries of what is known and what is accepted as science or as reality is a very noble goal, right? So, in general, we try to see what else is out there. We try to see if reality is just what we can see and hear and touch, or if there is something else beyond it. And I think that's the reason why most of us gravitate towards the occult because we just want to know what else is out there. And in your case, Yeti, I read in the comments that you started this search very, very, very early. So take us at the very beginning. What's the earliest memory you have of something that could be considered occult or paranormal?
Oh gosh. I was probably 4 years old, and I remember going through my mom's stuff, and I found her bag of runes. And my family, like my dad's Arabic, but my mother's side is Norwegian and German. And I grew up basically in a German household. So I grew up learning, you know, Germanic paganism and, Viking mythology before Christianity. So
Wow.
like
For
that
people
was my religion as
for
a
people
kid.
who don't know, I think when you say bag of runes, you're talking of little stones with certain signs etched on them. Is that right?
Exactly. Yeah, there's 24 runes in the runic line, almost as many as there are letters in the alphabet. And each rune signifies a different power or a different meaning. It was used also as a language, but mostly it was used as protection spells. To be ready in war. You would engrave runes on your weaponry and your armor and so on. So
Of course, as a child, you didn't know any of that. You just thought they were probably just fun little stones, right?
oh yeah, I had no idea what they were. Yeah, they were just little white stones with a bunch of markings on them.
So what did you do with them? Did your so you say this came from your mother mostly? Like, did she have any opinion when she saw you playing with them?
Oh, she encouraged it. Like my mother nowadays, she's heavily Christian now. But when I was growing up, she was a witch. So she had, I mean, like I grew up, there are candles in the room all the time. She had, and that was another thing I discovered when I was a kid, is her tarot deck. So I started playing with the tarot cards. The pictures on it as a little kid intrigued me.
So let's unpack that term, witch, because it means different things to different people. Are you talking about Wicca? Are you talking about something else?
Oh no, not Wicca. Wicca is, my opinion. Wicca is like a modern twist of what people have read through other people's writings. As far as it's like opinionated witchcraft in a way. Like
Okay.
people take bits and pieces of what they like from other different religions or mythos, and they put them together, and and that's what Wicca kind of is. It's like an
Huh.
amalgamation of modern people's ideas on what they think this specific group was doing for this festive day, or what was sacred to them, and they kind of just mishmashed it. But
Yeah. I might.
what I learned was like more of a pure form, like complete like Norse mythology. You studied and learned all the Aesir and the Vanir gods. You knew what each one's power was, their power animal, what they controlled, their nemesis in Ragnarok was, like Thor's was the Midgard serpent, Odin's was the Fenris wolf, so on.
So explain something to me. I want to throw these questions at you. Trying to speak on behalf of somebody who really has no idea and hasn't practiced the occultism, right? Like I was saying before, Three Kings is a place where we have all kinds of people. Some of those people
Hmm.
are skeptics. We don't shoo them
Oh
away,
yeah.
right? We think that skeptic have questions as long as they're well-meaning questions, right? As long as they're like honest questions, then we sort
Yeah.
of welcome a degree of skepticism. So from
Well, you
that
have to a
that
degree.
yeah, exactly, to something that's reasonable. So from that angle, let me ask you this. So you have explained Aesir and Vanir gods, and I see this interrelated with Norse mythology. But how do you go from being aware that that was just the Norse mythology to being a practitioner? Because I think that being a witch is like an active thing. You have to do something about it.
Oh yeah. No, I mean my mother, and that's how I learned. She was casting spells, and that's how I learned. I studied what she did, and she started teaching me. Like she taught me how to read tarot deck when I was 5 years old and 6 years old, and same with runes. And she taught me, okay, when you deal with the bag of runes, you only you shake it up, you pull one rune out.
Yeah,
That's basically the answer to your question. If you have a question, the rune will tell you your answer. Or then same with tarot. You have a question, lay it out, and it'll answer it to you. But your energy depends on that. Like, say for example, if I owned a tarot deck
yeah.
and I gave it to you to do a reading for me, it would be inaccurate because the idea, and I guess I hold it true to a degree because of the experiences I've had, is the per the person who buys that deck, that their power is imbued with it. The first
Ah,
person who touches that deck,
yeah.
that's their deck. So say if I gave my deck to someone else, it wouldn't
Right.
wouldn't work nearly
It
as well
wouldn't be
for
the
them.
same. So let me ask you something. So would your mother at the time, would she have said that she belonged to any sort of organized group of practitioners or any sort of, community, anything like that?
She never told me directly, but I'm sure she did because I remember as a child going over to a few of her friends' houses, and all they would do was talk witchcraft and practice. And
Interesting.
that just it intrigued me. I was like, as a little kid, and you read stuff about things like that, like magic or elves and fairies and giants and such,
Right.
you're taught at a young age that, oh, that's just made up. But then you see people practicing it, and then
And
you doubt it, and you think, well, maybe there's something to it.
did they ever refer to it by any term more specific than witchcraft, or was it always just generic witchcraft as a spell and that's about as
It was always either referred to as witchcraft or Norse spells.
interesting? Interesting. All right. So that I think is narrowing it down a little bit. Uh, tell me more about Norse spells, Norse magic.
Mostly it was used for, I guess to be blunt, it was used for mainly for war and for chronological purposes.
Ah,
Like I said, they use it as a language, but at the same time, it was used to imbue items with power. So you could use a certain rune for bloodshed that you put on your sword to make sure that you'd kill a certain amount of people, or you could put a different rune on your shield to as a protection, so make sure nobody would cut through you. But at the same time, they would use runes. to basically to chronologize, say, I know I said that wrong.
That's fine. Don't
Um,
worry about it.
you know,
The way I started this
voyages.
podcast was horrible, so we can only go up from there.
Okay.
Yeah.
But yeah, they would use it as a language just as much as protection. But I would say a bit more so. It was mainly magic. It was used for protection.
Now,
Um,
clearly, you didn't use it for swords, right? That would have been a fun kindergarten. If you
it
had,
it would have been
yeah,
a violent one.
that would have been interesting. I'm giving Hollywood writers ideas right now. So, what did you use it for?
um, as a kid for protection, make sure I never got hurt, made sure nothing happened to me, and I guess to a degree it worked. I never had a broken bone in my body.
Ah. Well, I'm sure you've heard of this joke, right? I think it was in The Simpsons. Was it Lisa trying to sell that? What was it? That tiger repelling talisman or something? And he was like, "How do you know it works?" And she was, "Well, have you seen any tigers?" And
Exactly.
right. So, look, let me ask you this question. And like I said, it's a completely innocent question. Is not. I'm not meaning anything beyond the question on its face value. How do
All
you
right, say
know?
what you mean here,
How do you
man.
know that it worked?
um, well, to be honest, there's no direct proof that I can say that it worked or not, aside from the fact that nothing's occurred to me.
Yes. No, it is absolutely
But
fair. Go ahead.
oh
Go ahead.
yeah, oh no, I was gonna say, and there were others I'd use, like say for that there are runes that like there's a rune for finding hidden items, and
Right.
I would use that as a kid, and I'd wind up finding maybe oddball minerals like opal or citrine or things like that. Um,
Yeah.
Little things. I mean,
I yeah.
nothing major, but
I want to clarify there is absolutely nothing wrong with faith. Faith is useful. I have heard two definitions of faith. So the first one is faith is the belief that a certain thing is a certain way without having actual proof of it. And that sounds a little bad, but actually, we go by faith all the time. I see a chair that I have never sat on, and I have a belief that if I sit in it, it's not gonna break.
yeah.
I've never tested it, right? I didn't
Hmm.
see that chair being manufactured, but I have a reasonable assumption from having seen how chairs in general work and knowing that such a thing exists as fabrication standards that if I go and sit my butt down in one of them, it's probably not gonna break. I don't have any evidence of it, but I believe it, right? Faith helps us
Hmm.
go through our lives. I think it's a natural part of life. And
Oh, it is
yeah, yeah.
definitely.
Part of the reason why I'm sort of doing this podcast is because if more of the things that we consider occult today start to become normalized in the way that we accept them as reality, kind of like as you did when you were a child. If you lost a little item, you go to your item finding rune and voila, the item comes up. If that sort of thing starts to become less ostracized in society, I think it can only move us forward. I think it only takes us closer to the point where we actually discover why these things work. And then they stop being occult and they start become science. At least that's what I think.
Oh, it's true. That kind of leads to I get. I'm sure many people have heard the phrase, "There's more that lies between heaven and hell, Horatio, than what is in your philosophy."
Right. I remember that one. Was it Shakespeare?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think so. So let's go back to your childhood. So there you are. You're a kid. You're experiencing tarot. If you have a question, you pull out a rune from the bag. If you lose an item, you use the item finding rune. Did anyone in your school ever caught up or realize that you were using, let's just say, tools that the rest of them did not?
Boy, probably only one or two of my close friends did, because a lot of the kids, when I would bring stuff like that up, they got freaked out. they they did not want to hear that some kid was doing stuff that wizards do, I guess, in their eyes.
And you would think it would be the other way around. You would think that kids would be like, "Whoa, are you going to Hogwarts?"
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I think that's kind of what you're going back to. that some of those beliefs are have been ostracized over time, and I think that's parenting. That's parents telling the kids, don't listen if this kid says he used a rune to find anything. Like
Right.
that's not how it works. Like God does that, and that's just another version of occultism
That's
when you get
exactly
down
what I
to
was
it.
going to say. Right? Don't listen to the kids who talk about runes. And by the way, behave if you want Santa to give you a gift later this year.
Yeah, it's like the joke, like there's the God that lives up in heaven. He's sitting on the throne. He's watching every move you do.
Yeah,
He's writing it all down.
that's the
And if you
George
don't,
Carlin
and
bit. Yes.
exactly, exactly. If you don't follow it, you're going to hell. But he still loves
But he
you.
loves you. I love that part. I miss George Carlin. But no, but that shows you that's an important thing. Like humans somehow are able to compartmentalize. Like they think of different ideas and for entirely different reasons that have nothing to do with evidence. They believe one set of them, or at least they consider them to be acceptable and normal and just respectable in society, while taking the entire other sect, which has just as much of a basis as the first one, and consider it somehow just out of the pale and crazy, right? Like, if you were to say to somebody, there is an all powerful being in the sky, who has a great hand in creation, they would be like, yeah, yeah, you're a Christian. And then you go, and his name is Odin. That's where they would like, whoa, right? But up until then,
Exactly.
up until that moment, they were with you. So
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. So what's going? So let's continue following to your childhood, right? So I ask you if anyone in class ever gave you any trouble or knew about what you did in the occult. You mentioned very few of them because most of them are being trained from a very early age to kind of reject that right out of the bat without even thinking about it. So let's progress to middle school. Was it more or less the same story?
Yeah, except in middle school, I pretty much hid it by that point. I didn't bring it up to anyone. I
Ah.
kept it completely to myself by that point.
What were the things that you were mostly doing at that age? Was it still just about finding lost items and just drawing a card when you had an answer, when you wanted an answer?
No, but by that point, it started to get into wanting to cast spells, learning actual spell work, like as far as but it was I guess you could say progression from the beginning of using runes and tarot for that same thing, but using a more powerful version by
So,
casting spells.
sounds like there's a story there. What was the first spell you wanted to cast? Was the first spell you actually casted?
Oh gosh. Well, the first one failed.
Okay.
The first one I tried to cast was a love one to get a girl that I liked in junior high
Oh,
school.
but those are supposed to be bad, or am I not hearing? I
No,
don't
no,
know.
no. They're not bad.
Yeah.
They, I
See,
mean,
that's an example of
there are
preconditioning, right? That's
ones.
an example of me bringing up stuff that I heard. So, all right.
There
So,
are a
set me
few that
straight.
are bad.
Tell us the truth about what's going on with love spells.
I mean, that there are a few that are bad, and that's black magic. That's the intent of it. That's not to like, oh, I want this person to love me. That's more of like it almost makes the person your objective is to make them a zombie for you. Basically, they have no free will, and
Right. That sounds
and
bad.
yeah, and that's where the idea of that comes from. But my problem is, well, at the time with that is one of the main components you need to make it work is you need something from that person. Generally, you use a lock of hair,
Uh
and I just was not able to get anything. So
oh.
I went on a whim and a prayer, hoping that I had enough to do it, and it did not work.
Oh my God, there are so many stories that could go wrong there, Like the girl has a favorite pet and she just, kisses her before school. The hair gets mixed in her brush. You pick up the brush and it's the dog's hair.
Uh, at that time, just my luck.
Oh God. All right, so it didn't work. Why? Why do you think it didn't work?
Oh, just because, like I said, I didn't have the correct components. I
Yeah,
mean,
I see.
the intent was there. That I definitely had the intent, but I was still a bit novice in it, but and also at that point, um, at middle school, I wasn't living with my mother. I kind of shifted between my mother and my grandfather. My grandfather raised me a bit more, but from I'd say baby to 10 years old, it was my grandfather and my mother raised me. Then it was my grandfather, and then my mom for a couple more years, and then my grandfather until I moved out.
There was a
So he
lot of change going on in your life.
Yeah, a lot of shifting back and forth, so I didn't have a constant, conduit to figure all that stuff out. So at in middle school, when I didn't have my mom around to ask these questions or figure things out, I was kind of figuring it out on my own and getting any books at the time that I could get my hands on to learn.
Would it be
And
fair to say that it was this period, perhaps, where you were at most risk of starting to fall into dark stuff? You know, you don't have
yes,
anyone to guide you. You certainly need
definitely.
certain things, right? So
And that
yeah,
happened.
yeah.
It,
Tell us
and
about it. Yeah.
that happened.
What happened? Go ahead.
When I moved back in with my mother in '95,
Yeah.
I was going through her books, and she had a lot of her books in her bookshelf in plastic bags. And I asked her once, why do you do that? And she said it's to contain the book's energies.
Whoa.
And they were all her spell books, and she said that was her way to contain the book's energies. And one time, I was
And
with one of my
you know, if
friends.
I was a
Oh,
teenager and someone told me that, the next thing I would do is open the plastic bag when no one is watching. Like
that's what I exactly did. I found
basically
her
an
black.
invitation.
I found her black magic book,
Oh my god.
and and I fucked up. Oh, pardon my language, but I did.
No, no, no,
I
no.
messed up big
Tell us
time.
the story. I mean, that's why the viewers are here for.
Um, I've yeah found her black magic book, and of course, the first image you turn in it is Baphomet. The famous son
Yeah,
of the devil,
yeah,
where he's
yeah.
eating
Sol
one person
Coagula.
down the mouth and he's shitting out another person. And it wasn't Anton LaVey's book. My grandfather actually knew and worked with Anton LaVey before he started the Church of Satan.
Whoa.
Yeah, he worked in the boiler room in a machine shop.
Holy crap. All right, so
Yeah,
this book was maybe
but
that's how she got a hold of the book? Possible?
I don't think through him. I think she knew who to talk to and what to look for, and that's going back to what you're bringing up about, was she in a sect?
Right.
Was she part of a group? I think she may have been, and I didn't know,
I
or
see.
she just knew the right people to talk to find out the
All
right
right.
books to buy and so on.
So
And
let's paint the
that
moment, right? So you have recently just moved back. She has just told you that certain books are so powerful that she actually keeps them literally sealed. You happen to grab one of them, is the black magic one. And then what do you do?
I opened it up,
Yeah.
and I called my one of my friends on the phone, and I said, "Oh, you want what I found?" And I told him, and of course, teenage boys, first thing he says is, "Read something out of it. Let's see what it says."
Yeah.
So I go through it, and I find a spell that is it's called a psychic attack, where
Okay.
basically by reading this incantation out loud, anyone that within earshot of it gets a horseshoe burn mark and pain on their arm. And after I read that out loud, my friend started, and this I know this sounds like total bull, but
No, 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 no. Go ahead.
he started not wincing, but you could hear him kind of yelping in the background. And I asked what was going on. He said his arm was burning, and I asked, "So what's going on?" He's like, "I have a red letter U on my arm,"
Holy crap. So
and
let's be clear
he had
here.
a horseshoe on his
You were
arm
not
from
casting
that
anything
attack.
on him as far as you knew,
No,
right? He was
no,
just like a bystander, and somehow the effects targeted him anyway, even though he was not the intended person.
exactly. And that happened to every person I talked to on the phone that day. Like whatever I did, I guess it because I spoke it through the phone. About 4 or 5 of my friends I talked to on the phone that day all got burn marks on the same arm in
Jesus.
the same area of the same thing, of a horseshoe.
So look, that is physical evidence, my friend. That's the kind of thing that could convince a skeptic, right? Because you got five people living far away from each other with the same burn mark on the same day. I mean, I
Yeah,
guess if somebody really wanted to be skeptic about it, well, they obviously planned it, blah 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 blah. But if you remove ill intent from the equation, I mean, I think that's as close to proof as it gets. Did you tell
yeah.
them it was you? Sorry, guys, my phone.
After I did, I didn't tell him then. I was too scared. I was too scared of what was going on. And and after that, more stuff started happening. Like the first night, of course, I didn't say anything to my mom. I didn't tell her anything. I acted like nothing happened. And that night, I had like an old CD system, that would hold like 3 CDs, 2 cassette tapes, had a record player on top, one of from the mid 90s, and the thing turned itself on, and it would change the CD, put it up, go back in, then spit the CD out, change it, go back in, and it was just doing it randomly. So I turned it off, went back to sleep, woke up, it was doing it again, and it did it about 3 or 4 times that night. And the second night, after that, remarkably nothing weird happened during the day.
Yeah.
I stayed off the phone, but the second night, I woke up, and at the same time that my CD player started acting weird again, and when I turned it off, I could hear somebody calling my name in the middle of the night. I could hear somebody
Oh,
asking for me
holy shit!
by
That's
my first name, and it freaked me out. And
yeah.
so I told my mom after that. I told her, I was like, "Look,
Yes,
mom,
that's where I was about to
I
go
messed
next. Like
up."
at some point, you must have asked for help because this doesn't sound
Yeah,
like the kind of thing that gets well by itself.
yeah. So
So how did she react? Oh boy.
and at the time she was back into being a Christian again. Anytime she went through a messy breakup or a divorce, she always fell back to religion. And this was
Interesting.
shortly after one, and she became, devoutly Christian at that point. But she still had all her stuff. And I told her what happened, and that night she did some type of spell, because she said, make sure all the doors, windows are closed, line them with salt, lit certain colored candles in certain areas of the house, spoke a few words from a book that I do not remember what she spoke from now. And she told me that if anybody calls your name at night, you recite this. And she handed me a copy of the New Testament. She had gave me a copy of the Bible,
Yeah.
marked at the New Testament portion where Jesus exorcises a demon from a I think a leper. And she said, if you hear somebody calling your name, start reading that passage out loud. And I woke up, and I started hearing somebody start calling my name again. So I freaked out. I turned my little lamp on in my room, and I started reading. And after about, oh, I don't know, maybe 30 or 40 seconds, it slowly dissipated and then just stopped. It just got
Wow.
quiet and it stopped. And I didn't go back to sleep. I stayed up all night after that. I was freaked out. Not only of what was going on, but that actually worked to.
No, that's heavy. But here's the thing. I mean, here's what I find fascinating. Okay, so from what you are describing, your mom goes through some sort of emotional upheaval, right? Every time a relationship ends, that's obviously taxing. That's obviously a difficult time, and she goes to religion to try to find some sort of solace from whatever struggle she's feeling in the personal realm. And then this religion, Christianity, is actually very clear on all of these occult stuff being almost forbidden, right? But when her
Yes.
son is in danger, she's like, you know what? I'm not supposed to use this particular tool, but that's the tool that's gonna save my son. So here you go. And
Yeah.
and she tells you exactly what to do.
Yeah,
That's
and she had no qualms about doing it at all.
yeah. That is incredibly interesting. So, I don't know if you heard the previous podcast, the third one. I came from a pretty religious family myself, right? And
Okay.
yeah, my father, he was the way they call it in the Jehovah Witnesses organization. They use the title
Ha!
elder,
Yeah, yeah.
elder,
That's what my mother is.
elder in the Jehovah Witnesses. Oh my God.
She's not an elder, but she's a JW.
That's right, because elders can only be male. I
Yeah.
bet most people didn't know about Jehovah Witnesses. They
Good old modern sexism.
exactly, because and there is a letter from Apostle Paul or something that says that if a woman is to speak to the congregation, she must cover her head. And
Well, I think. Oh no, I'm thinking of Peter. I was going to say this because Peter, if that was Saint Peter that said that, it's because he hated Mary Magdalene
yeah,
because she was closer to Jesus than Peter was.
Paul said women to cover their head when preaching. Let's see what comes up. I'm googling that right. Christian head covering. There you go. So yeah. Anyway, taking a segue here, but basically, I have that background experience from my father, right?
Mm.
And I know that these Christian religions, especially the ones that follow closely the Bible, they frown upon heavily upon all the occult stuff. And the
Yeah,
fact that she did
and
not
it's funny
hesitate,
because
yeah,
they use occultism to such a degree. Like if people actually do research Christianity,
yeah,
that's a lot of occultism. They used a lot of Sumerian mythos, like the whole flood idea. That's from Sumerian. Um, I mean, even modern. Like I was a couple weeks ago when I was talking to my now ex girlfriend, I was explaining to her about where Christmas comes from, and I told her I was like, Christmas has nothing to do with the birth of Christ.
yes.
It's a Germanic celebration of the winter solstice.
That's right. It's when the sun starts getting brighter finally after shrinking all winter.
Yeah,
No,
and
a hundred
and they
percent.
crown a Christmas princess, kind of like they do the May Queen in Sweden.
100%. And look, there are ceremonies everywhere. I mean, even the Jehovah Witnesses, whom we have been talking about, they have something that has the hints of an occult ceremony. So every year, when the moon is highest in the month of Nisan, the fourth. So Nisan is a Jewish month, and the 14th of Nisan is supposedly when Christ was killed. Is Passover. So they figure out which day of the year 14 Nissan is going to land, and that's when they do their biggest. I want to call it ceremony. And if my family heard me right now, they would be so disappointed in me right now. but but it's their
Yeah,
biggest
I think
ceremony
that
of
they
the
do a
year.
meal, right? They have a big
Well,
meal, and
it's
people.
really interesting. So here's what's going on. So in the last dinner, Christ, he had this bread and he has this wine, and he tells his apostles, he said, eat this bread, for it is my flesh, and drink this wine is my blood. Right. So, the Jehovah Witnesses today during this ceremony, they certainly have right next to the podium, they certainly have unleavened bread, and they're very precise about the bread having no levadura. I don't know how to say that word in English because I came from Mexico. That's where I learned all this stuff. Unleavened bread. Actually,
And
let's.
that's all it is, just leavening.
Yeah, oh, leavening. Thank you. And they have wine, and the wine also has to be very specific, right? We don't want a lot of organic compounds. Like, it has to be very natural wine. And then
Oh, exactly.
in a methodical way, which is it has the highlights of an occult ritual. They they make this ceremony of passing the bread and passing the wine from one attendee to the other, just from chair to chair. You just grab it and you pass it. You grab it and you pass it, and you're not supposed to partake of it, because if you do, then that means that at least you believe you're going to be one of the 144,000 chosen ones, uh, chosen few who are actually going to heaven. When after the apocalypse, after Judgment Day.
And and
So
and
if
and
that's
I
not
don't
a
think they
ritual, then I
really
don't know what it is.
and I don't think they accounted mathematically for that because how many millions
Oh no, it doesn't make sense. So basically, here's how it works. There is 12 tribes, and there is 12,000 people. So 12,000 times 12. There you go, 44. But
Uh,
but everybody else who is not in that number, right, is supposed to be is gonna live forever on Earth, right? And these
mm,
144,000 rulers are going to ascend to heaven, and they're going to rule from heaven, right? So ironically, that number within the Jehovah Witnesses organization is growing. Is growing. Why? Because like any religion, this religion is growing. They are proselytizing heavily, and the ranks of the Jehovah Witnesses are growing. And for every X number of people who join Jehovah Witnesses, a certain Y percentage of them believe they're going to be in heaven, and they're going to be one of the 144,000. So
yeah.
it's going up like a stock. And, and what happens is that if you believe you are one of those people, when they give you the bread and when they give you the wine, you actually drink it and you actually eat it. And then you feel very satisfied about yourself, and you pass it to the next person who just stares at you in awe. Right? That's basically
Yeah.
how it works. So it is a weird ceremony. It is a weird occult ritual done
Yeah. I
by
mean,
the
when you think
people.
about that,
Yeah,
to drink blood and eat flesh.
exactly. Is like think of the markers of a ritual, right? Something that is done in a ceremonious way. Check. Something that represents something else. Bread represents flesh, wine represents blood. Check. Something that is done on a special time of the year according to astronomical, markers. In this case, 14 of Nisan is when the moon happens to be biggest at the time of the year. Check. Is an occult ritual. Is an occult ritual by the people
Yeah.
who don't believe in occult rituals. If I sound salty, it's because I was very thirsty when I was 8 years old, and I actually drank the goddamn wine, and I
Mm.
and I got in trouble for a month, and I haven't
Hey,
forgiven
Fable.
them since.
How's
So
my audio levels coming through?
there we go, Dapper. You came at an opportune
Hey,
time.
there he is.
Here's my co-host with the mostest, Dapper. How you doing, my friend?
Co-house with the most. I'm doing great. I just I need a new microphone apparently. No,
Fair.
I want to interject. There's this growing line of dialogue I had been reading the other day about how the Jesuits had sort of infiltrated the Vatican and turned it into a cannibal cult.
Explain. Tell us more about that. I don't know what to
Oh.
search for in Google.
No, that's pretty much it. The body of Christ symbolism is like down below the Vatican. There's like tons and tons of skeletons. I don't know if you heard that story the other day where they dug up a bunch of skeletons outside the Vatican.
Jesus.
Yeah, I heard about that.
Jesuits dig skeletons below Vatican. That's gonna be a fun Google search. Let's
Yeah,
see.
yeah, that's
Vatican necropolis. Oh my God, it actually exists. Why am I surprised? Of course it does. Lies under Vatican City at depths varying between 5 to
Well,
12
imagine what
meters.
they have in.
Exactly. I mean, Da Vinci Code was right. So, all right, let's go back to our topic, because what we have here, ladies and gentlemen, and anyone in the chat, please feel free to type a message or a question. What we have here is a person who has been doing occult rituals basically his entire life. This is a golden opportunity to ask somebody a lot of pertinent questions, like why would someone do that? What had the effects been? So I'm gonna do just that. So tell us, if you will, what do you think has been the effects or the impact on your life from you following all these practices and actually putting them to, being active in them, not just believing them, but actually doing rituals, actually casting spells? How has that impacted you?
Well, nowadays, I mean, it fascinates me still to a large degree. I'm always studying and reading up on new ones that either get posted on Three Kings or elsewhere. Um, reading a lot of the geishas and a lot of mandatory reading that people go through with these. But
Right.
now it's mostly I try and caution people on what to do and what not to do because of errors I've made. Like I made a pretty, like I was mentioning before we started, I made error in performing one. I actually even tried, when I was on vacation with one of my other ladies about a year ago, and she was up in the hotel room, and I said, "Oh, I'm gonna go get something to drink." And for kicks, I did the elevator ritual to see
Oh.
if it would work, and it didn't
Ah.
work. But I tell you, when it got to the fifth floor, and then the door started open, I was very nervous to see if it was gonna work or not.
Imagine it had worked. What would have been your reaction? Like, you know the famous meme of the guy that
Well,
opens a box and says, "I don't know what I expected." You know?
I probably would have been able to deal with it. 'Cause I see ghosts on a fairly regular basis, so seeing an undead spirit wouldn't affect me that much.
Whoa.
But
Let's
but
unpack
this
that
is one you're
statement.
not
Let's
that's
because
just not one you're supposed to look at.
you have just given us the Sixth Sense movie in real life. Tell me more. How does that work? What do you see?
um Mostly I see people that look just like people, but they don't move like people.
Holy
And
crap.
it all started after I messed with that black magic book. I started seeing spirits.
Oh,
And they don't they generally they may look like they're walking, but their legs don't fully touch the ground. So they're almost walking slash running but hovering at the same time, and it's a very odd feeling and thing to
that
see. Like
is
one night,
three kinds of creepy. Can they see
yeah.
you? Can they
Oh
interact
yeah.
with you?
If they know that you can see them, they like a perfect example of that was one night. Oh, this is probably about 3 or 4 years ago. I was
Yeah.
walking around late at night, and I saw someone maybe 300 feet down the street from me, and they were staring at a house. And I thought, well, that's odd. I've never seen this person here, because I know most of my neighbors in my neighborhood.
Yeah.
And I stopped and I stared at the person for a minute, and then the person stopped looking at the house and turned and looked at me, and eye contact was made. I don't know. Some people talk about you get a tingle at the back of your neck,
Yeah.
stuff like that, and I just felt something was amiss. Just a gut feeling that something wasn't right. And so I started carrying on walking away, and this thing started to not walk, but seemed like it was running towards me, and I ran as fast as I could to my house
Yeah, the other
to
way,
get away
obviously. Yeah.
from it. Oh
Right.
yeah, as fast as I could.
Can
And I
can
mean,
doors
my
stop them?
no,
So, ooh, so he got into your house.
no, you can stop them with like with spells
Ah.
and not almost very similar to runes. You use sigils. I had to
Yes.
do that in the house I live in now. That is a house I grew up in.
Right,
I
right,
had
right.
a real bad haunting in this house. Like I kept seeing a person standing at the top of my stairway. I wouldn't leave my bedroom at night
Cause
to use the bathroom because I'd feel eyes on the back of my head following me.
so here's something I've been thinking for a long time, and maybe I'm overthinking these things, but it goes like this. It goes, okay, so let's take as a premise that yes, ghosts do exist, and let's add a second premise that says they actually know that they are ghosts, and they realize that most people can't see them. It must be a terrifying experience, right? It must be hell on earth, literally, because you are screaming into a crowd, nobody can literally see you, and you are completely, helpless to
Yeah.
you know so then suddenly, right, you're staring at this house. Maybe it's the house you got murdered in or something, and you're wishing, god damn it, I never got my revenge. I have this massive unfinished business. Hey, wait a minute, is that kid looking at me? And then you turn around. Oh crap, he is looking at me. He can see me. Holy shit. I have to ask him like a million things. Let me run to him. Oh no, why is he running away? He got into his house. Fuck, why can't I get in? Did it have to have a sigil? The one kid who can't see me just had to have a sigil. That's just my life. Fuck me in the afterlife and then walk away. Is
A
that
lot of ghost things that I come across always seem to reference them like being echoes, like not necessarily full people, but like the the phantom memory of the person and their emotions when they had passed away. So not like necessarily full thinking people like we assume, but
yeah?
they're kind of like repeating mirror images of a specific time and place.
I've
I
heard that too. It's almost like video playback where they're reliving a certain thing that happened in their life over and over again.
Well, that would be a lot more merciful, right? Because
Yeah,
then they don't have this sort of dialogue running in their head that I just badly dramatized, right? Because they're
yeah,
just stuck in a moment and they don't necessarily know that they're stuck in a moment and they
Yeah, but
can't
then
get
you get
out
the
like you do.
Groundhog Day effect, and they're stuck in that loop forever.
yeah.
But the
But
problem with that theory is that then they wouldn't see you. And what we're hearing from our
yeah,
friend here, they do see you and they try to interact with you.
and they do. They definitely do.
So tell us,
I
what's
think
the most
ones that
interaction you've had with a ghost?
oh my gosh. Okay. I'll give you two examples. One is the earlier one is my house. Like I was saying, the house is haunted. And I always had weird feelings when I was a kid in this house. And then later on, after I messed with that book, I started seeing figures in this house. And I told my best friend at the time what was going on. He said, "Put this up," and he drew the Eye of Ra, the Egyptian eye. And he
Yeah.
said, hang that up opposite of your door, your bedroom door. Like when you open the door, it'll be straight in your line of sight, opposite on the wall, straight ahead. He said, you put that up, and it'll block spirits from being able to enter your bedroom.
Ah.
And so I hung that sigil up, and I swear to go, I
Yeah.
swear to
To
whatever.
whatever.
I swear to Odin that
Yes.
on that night I hung it up. I was woken up at about 12:30, at maybe a little after 12:30 in the morning, and my the doorknob on my door is shaking back and forth violently, but my door's unlocked. But whatever it was couldn't get in, and it's shaking, shaking, shaking the knob, and this goes on for about 25 seconds,
So,
and
how
then
do you
it
live
just
alone?
stopped.
Is there anyone else in the house?
Just my grandfather.
So it couldn't have been him.
But
No, no
it
way, right?
no, it wasn't him because I slept upstairs. He slept downstairs, and
Yeah.
he was always passed out by about 9:30.
Wow.
And yeah, so after close to 30 seconds of this, the knob just violently shaking back and forth like somebody was trying to break into my room. It stopped, and then just heard a bang, like somebody punched my door as hard as they could.
Oh wow.
And the next morning, I checked my door, and there was about an 18, and I measured it just to do it. There was about an 18-inch crack in my bedroom door in the wood, wherever that thing hit it.
Wow. That is all kinds of scary, and that opens all kinds of questions.
Yeah.
So I mean, there is an afterlife. They can interact with us unless you have the Eye of Ra, and they're strong enough to actually cause property damage.
Oh
So
yeah.
that's that's pretty bad. Look, we take us to the main story. So right before the podcast began, you were telling me, in the green room, so to speak, that you had this experience with a ritual from Three Kings about a certain kimono.
Oh yes, yeah. I posted for help about that too. Like that was the only time I've actually ever asked anyone for help during anything like this.
The white kimono ritual. I need help.
The white
This
kimono
is
ritual.
you a year ago.
Yeah.
Tell us what happened. Walk us through it.
Well, basically, I found out about that ritual, and like a fool, I decided, well, with my experience, I'll give it a try, and we'll see how real some of this is, because it just seems so inflated, like some of the quote unquote dangerous ones that are posted. You think there's no way this can be real. This is
Yeah.
made up. So
When
I
I read
decided
about it, I thought it was The Grudge. I thought somebody watched The Grudge and it's like cool.
it
But
yeah. and
right?
it's
But
it's
then
messed up.
things started. You're not the only one, my friend. There is a lot of kimono rituals in Three Kings. Like a lot of people have been having issues, right? And the scary part
Yeah,
is that apparently this is the kind of thing that activates kind of like just by reading it. Like
and
kind of
and
like
and that's
you watch
that's
the
what happened
forbidden
with
tape
me.
and the phone rings 7 days, that kind of thing. Here is like you read the forbidden ritual, and which is what you did, and then
Yeah.
what happened?
Yeah, and the thing is it's not just reading it to yourself. You have to read it aloud.
Ah,
It goes back to the old ideals of in old religions and old ways of magic. Words had power, and that was because people were illiterate, and people that were literate were almost considered magical because of their intelligence. So words had power. So when you recite these things, these older rituals, there's power in the words. And when people will say, "Oh, there's no way you can activate a ritual by reading it," that's very untrue.
yeah.
Because words have very powerful meaning, especially if you put certain ones together or certain phrases together. And this one worked because I read it,
Yeah, and
and
you read it out loud.
I started having dreams right away. I started being followed by this woman in my dreams, and it didn't stop for a little over 2 weeks. Every night I was waking up,
Oh
and I
God.
was being followed around slowly too, not running, just she was slowly walking around, muttering to herself, trying to get close to me, and my
Oh
whole dream was
shit.
me running, trying to get away from her. So
This
after
is
about two
creepy as
two
hell.
weeks, oh, it
Yeah.
gets better too. Believe me, it
Yeah.
gets way better. So it stops. These dreams stop. So I figure, okay, I'm in the clear.
Yeah.
About a month later, when I'm laying down in bed, I start feeling something pushing down on my bed and touching my bed. And it just started happening for a few nights in a row. And then finally I got up, I turned and looked, and I could see this woman, and I wide awake, walking back and forth in front of my open bedroom door, just
Holy
walking
crap.
back and forth.
So
And
inside the
it's the
room?
same inside my house, about 10
Holy
feet away from
shit.
where I was sleeping. And she's just pacing back and forth and looking at me and muttering.
What did she
And
look like? What that
it is very stereotypical. She looked like a, what's the word? A ure. It's like a
Yeah, yeah,
Japanese
yeah. Long black hair, white
long back.
skin.
Yeah, white skin, white robe. Very much like a stereotypical, like the stuff like the Ring and the Grudge.
Right.
Those are ures,
Yeah, no, they're
and
based on the traditional representation of what everybody in that area believes.
yeah, it's
That
a Japanese demon,
whoa.
and
No, what
she would
I'm reading here that eventually she also visited, like, she rang the doorbell.
yeah,
Oh my god.
that was the most fucked up thing. I mean, she paced back and forth in front of my bedroom door, and would mess with my bed when I'd try and go to sleep, and this went on for a good month and a half, almost 2 months, and I started to get to the point where I wouldn't go to sleep. I didn't want to
Yeah.
sleep,
No, I would have been
and
driven absolutely nuts, 100% crazy.
yeah. So one morning, I actually fall asleep because my brain just needs to sleep, and I hear the doorbell. And I looked at my my phone, and it was 6 in the morning. And I thought, which one of my neighbors is at my house,
Yeah,
ringing my doorbell at 6 in the bloody morning?
right.
And I get up, and I'm groggy as hell. I throw my glasses on, put my robe on, get up, and I look through my peephole, and that same bloody woman is standing at my front door, looking, as if she knew I was the peephole. She's making eye contact with me, looking at me through the peephole,
I'm getting
just looking at
chills.
me.
Oh shit.
I flipped. I flipped out. I turned away. I was like, I started saying out loud, "This isn't happening. This isn't happening." And
Of
I was home
course.
alone.
Holy
There was no one
crap.
home, just me, and I'm like, "This isn't happening. This isn't happening. This is a trick of my mind because I'm not awake yet. I'm trying to think of any
Yeah,
excuse."
that's what I would have thought too. Yeah.
And about 20, 30 seconds later, or maybe not even that long, maybe I'm exaggerating, maybe it was only 15 seconds or so, I was like, okay, it's got to be gone. I look through, and she's in the exact same position, still
Oh
looking, didn't move.
no.
I was like, all right, this has gone far enough, and that's when I started calling out for help on Three Kings, and I wound up going to a Japanese Shinto shrine that's about 4 or 5 miles from where I live, and I got what's called an ofuda, and basically it's a charm
Ah,
to ward off against certain yurays or yokais, and
yeah, they
you
use those
you
in anime all the time. You actually got a real one. That's awesome.
yeah, I had to go. I spoke with a Shinto priest. I told him what I did, what was going on. I had to be very descriptive so he knew what I was dealing with, and he gave me an ofuda, and within 2 days everything stopped,
Wow.
and nothing's happened since
I'm
then.
reading the comment right now. For everybody watching the stream, this is a comment. Oh, I know this guy. Cool Skeleton Papyrus. He used to message me all the time back in the day.
I need to actually message. He's a good guy. He's on Three Kings almost all the time, and him and me became fast friends. And
Yeah, yeah,
I
yeah. No,
I,
I
I haven't
remember
I
him.
haven't been in contact with him for a while. He actually messaged me happy holidays, and I need to get back to him because he's a really
Yeah.
good person and he's
Yeah.
very knowledgeable.
Say hi to him from me. He used to help me a lot with moderation back in Three Kings. And I see that right here is second to the top comment. He gave you the answer. But
Yeah.
it's funny. So this happened a year ago. Here is the one comment that I upvoted, and I don't know if the guy saying this was being, facetious or if he was
Mm-hmm.
being serious. He says, "OP, you definitely have a shot of wording this, and your weapon of choice is going to be a digital camera." I probably read that and upvoted. So, I mean, it's facetious, right? You're not gonna defeat a real ghost with a camera, but if you take a picture of a real ghost, you can make some pretty big changes in the skeptic community.
Oh, you definitely can.
Like even Ring, yeah, Ring is the company that makes these doorbells, and
Mm-hmm.
get a Ring video. Now the problem with that, a lot of people have asked me about, for instance, Three Kings, right? And there is a bunch of stuff in YouTube about people who film themselves during Three Kings. I
It
know that's
doesn't
never
work.
gonna
It,
work.
it it
I know
doesn't
it'll
work
never
because
work. It's happening in your head.
yeah, and also digital items. For some reason they interfere with spirits or the spirit world.
Yeah,
Like
my
they'll
my
they'll they'll,
theory.
they'll use the batteries to drain the electrical power because that's how they get seen.
In the
What's one of the
case,
main ways is they use electrical currency. So they'll drain phone batteries, they'll
right?
drain camera batteries, but you're not going to get pictures. Like 99% of anything that's on YouTube, that's, oh, I got a picture of a ghost, or I
Yeah,
got a picture of this or that. It's bull because
that's
you're
right.
not going to. So all these people that may have good intentions, like there's the one guy, I think he does all that stuff. I think it's live sci-fi on
Okay.
YouTube, and he tries all these rituals and he films them. He's a blonde guy. I think it's live sci-fi, and he tries all these rituals and none worked. And it's because he's filming them, and he's intentionally breaking certain rules to these rituals that you're not supposed to do, otherwise they won't work.
Right.
And he wonders why they don't work, or he says, oh, this one didn't work, it's fake. It's like, it's not that it's fake, it's because you did it wrong.
Yeah, no, in the case of Three Kings, right, which is the one thing that I can claim I know a lot of. My theory is that whatever people experience, if they hear something, it's not because there are sound waves in the room that could be physically captured by a microphone. If they hear something, it's because something in their mind is generating thought signals that are resembling speech. Right? If they see
Yeah.
something, their eyes are seeing something, the lens is not going to capture any light or visual manifest of anything. Right? It's all just going to happen
Or it
inside their
could be
head.
that entity wants that specific person to see them, either to induce fear or they think that maybe this person can help them in some way. And it's usually one of the two. Either the ghost wants guidance and help to get through to the afterlife, or the thing wants to scare the hell out of you because it feeds on your fear. And the more fearful you are, the more powerful it can be. And
Oh shit!
that's kind of like the effect with
Hey,
poltergeists
check this out.
or exorcisms.
Yeah.
Like if you give a demonic or an evil malicious spirit fear, it just makes it more powerful. The best way
Yes.
to deal with them is to ignore.
No, go ahead. That was just background noise. Go ahead.
I was going to interject. There's this great quote in John Dies at the end where he talks about how the dark things of the universe don't haunt old houses or abandoned ships. They haunt minds.
Right. That's a good quote. That's a good quote.
Yeah.
No, and I think the point that you were making, Yeti, before is a very valid point. I think that's the reason why rituals work at all. Is because by practicing them and by putting effort in them, we're putting belief in them, right?
Exactly.
And these entities,
Exactly.
that is their currency. That's what they deal with. They deal in belief, right? You give
Yeah.
it to them either
And
by
it's the intent.
exactly
know?
right. If you read something out loud, maybe that's all it takes. Maybe that's enough belief to
Yeah.
to let them come into your mind. So
Or people
go
that
ahead,
try and play the games for a laugh and they wonder why they don't work. It's because you didn't take it
because
seriously
they
at
didn't
all.
believe in it. Exactly. No,
Yeah,
100%.
they thought, oh well, it's not work, so of course it's not gonna work
Well, this guy
unless
live sci-fi, he has a
unless you
10
want to do a blood
hour
ritual.
he has a 10-hour podcast of doing three kings at the most haunted house in America. I there's no way I'm gonna see 10 hours of this, but I
No,
bet you $5 nothing happened. Let me see.
yeah, all you're gonna watch is a guy sitting down and talking once in a while and saying, "Oh, I felt a cold gust up my butthole. Oh, I think there's a spirit here," or
Exactly.
like.
That's exactly right. Guys, like I said at the beginning of the show, even though I butchered the intro, time flies. So we've been here for an hour. Sean, any last thoughts you want to tell to everybody?
Yeah, I have a question for our guest.
Go
Have you
right
ever
ahead.
seen a movie called A Dark Song?
A dark song? No, that I have not seen. No.
I would check it out and see if you can get a copy. I don't know if it's still on Netflix, but I would watch that film. It's probably the best film I've ever seen for the occult and supernatural.
A Dark
Okay.
Song, 2016 Irish-British independent horror film. Interesting. Okay, I'll thank you, Dapper.
Let's put that as homework for both of you for next
Yeah,
weekend.
And what was it again?
your
The
check is in
dark
the mail.
song?
That's what it's called, The Dark Song. That's the title.
Okay.
Yeah,
So
it's
I want to make sure I remember that.
A
It's
Dark
by
Song.
Liam Gavin.
That's
and
right.
Stars Steve Oram and Catherine Walker.
I've heard
So
of
basically,
Liam Gavin. Okay.
this lady's son dies, and she does a ritual to get her son back, or something like that. And
Hey.
it takes a lot of twists and turns.
What could possibly go wrong?
But it also involves the higher guardian, which is something Thelemic talks about.
Ah.
Interesting.
There's actually a movie similar to that premise that was done by the same. I always forget the director's name, and I'm always embarrassed. But he did the movie Performance that Mick Jagger was in.
Okay.
And he also did one other film that's very well known, and I'm gonna kick myself in the ass for not remembering it.
No,
But he did a movie called was it Don't Look Behind You.
It's
And
either
it
Donald
stars
Camel or Nicholas Roeg. Those are the directors
Okay.
of Performance.
Roeg. It was Roeg.
Roeg. Nicholas
And
Roeg.
I think it's Don't Look Behind You, and it stars Jane Fonda and Donald Sutherland as a husband and wife whose daughter just died in a car accident. And Jane Fonda links up with two psychics in
Yeah,
Italy
Don't Look
where
Now.
they're staying.
Don't Look Now. Right.
Yes. And she links up with two psychics who say that they can talk to the spirit of her dead daughter. And it's
You know what?
basically
We've aired that at my station before. I know that movie.
yeah, it's a great film, and it's similar, and it sounds like in vain to that in the same vein of movie.
All right.
Oh well,
Maybe not as cultic, but
the reason I had suggested Dark Sun is because part of the process of doing magic and of studying the supernatural is sacrifice, is self-sacrifice, is pain, is suffering. It doesn't come free. It doesn't come easy.
it
Well,
doesn't. I mean, even the story of Odin, he gave up his eye for knowledge.
right.
He sacrificed his eye. He hung himself to death for 12 days on the ash tree, and basically committed suicide to be reborn and know all there was to know knowledge-wise in the world.
So here's the thought that I'm going to leave all the watchers with. If we have established that belief is the currency that these spiritual entities basically trade in, and by giving them belief, you essentially give them power. Imagine if you were able to package that belief in the form of a nice little film that you then distribute all over the world and have it watched by thousands of people. Fun times. So, don't look now, and a dark song. Ladies and gentlemen, go give some belief and make creepy things happen. Jetty, any last thoughts for anybody before we call it a day?
Oh gosh, be careful what you play with, and only, I guess, really only engage in rituals that are safe and self-beneficiary. If you're doing rituals to have a fun time and see if something that sounds scary is real,
Yeah.
don't bother doing it, because you're just going to open Pandora's box and you're going to have a real bad time.
On that note, I mean, somebody posted recently, here it is, experience Three Kings, the OG ritual, bunch of boats. It ends with, I don't recommend anyone try this. And to be fair, when I first posted this, the title was, please don't try this. So, that has been Three Kings. Ladies and gentlemen, Jetty, you were a wonderful guest. Thank you so much. And
Thank you for having me.
yeah, we'll be back in 1 week. In the meanwhile, everybody, stay safe. Bye-bye.
Yeah, thanks for coming on the show, man.
Yeah, no problem. Thank you. Oh, I definitely would be. Yeah, I have many more encounters and stories I could go on with.
That's some wild stuff. Dead ghost girls and everything.
It was messed up, man. I don't wish that on